The biggest difference between photography and filmmaking is the fact that in photography we capture still images, while in filmmaking we capture moving images. Now the moving part can either be the subject moving within a frame or the camera moving while capturing that subject. Today we will cover different camera moves we come across in film and how to use them effectively. And if you stick to the end of the video, I will give you a couple of examples on how to use camera movement to enhance your visual storytelling. Let's get to it. There are countless ways to move a camera, and some of the movements are very advanced and require specialized equipment. But if you really break it down, there is only a handful of basic camera moves that we can do, and every other move is achieved by combining two or more of those moves. In this video I make a distinction between two types of camera moves: technical camera moves and creative camera moves. Now, technical camera moves solely focus on the movement of the camera and will stay the same regardless of the subject you are filming. Creative camera moves, on the other hand, are either a combination of multiple technical moves or are dependent on the subject in the frame. Let me give you an example of both types of moves. This is a push-in. The camera is moving forward. It doesn't matter what subject is in the frame, it will always remain a push-in. This is a technical camera move. Now, if we do the same move but are now following a subject, it is called a tracking shot. Tracking shot is a creative move because it is dependent on the moving subject being in the frame. Now the camera movement remains the same, it is still called a push-in, but because we are tracking a subject now, it is also called a tracking shot. Now that we've established the difference, let's start with the technical moves. This is when a camera is rotating from left to right or right to left while staying in a fixed position. It can be used to go from one subject to another, to follow a moving subject, or to show a point of view of a person who is looking left or right. This is the same move as a pan, only in a vertical direction. So this time the camera rotates up or down instead of left or right. It can be used for the same things as a pan, only this time in a vertical direction. As I explained in the example before, a push-in is when the camera is moving forward. It can be used to emphasize subject's importance or emotion, create suspense, or serve as a point of view shot of someone walking forward. The opposite of the push-in is the pull-away. The camera is now moving backwards. It can be used to make a subject smaller or as a point of view of someone walking backwards. When the camera is moving from left to right or vice versa, we call it a trucking shot, not to be confused with the tracking shot, which we will cover shortly. This type of shot can also be used to go from one subject to another, to follow a subject, or to reveal something behind an obstruction, for example. Now that we have gone left, right, forwards and backwards, the only other way to go is up or down. That is exactly what the boom does. We can boom up or boom down, in which case the camera elevates or lowers. It can be used to go from one floor of a building to another, for example, to reveal a subject from head to toe or vice versa, or as a point of view of someone standing up. When the camera maintains the looking direction of the lens but rotates clockwise or counterclockwise, we call it a roll movement. This movement will result in a tilted horizon in the frame. It can be used to show that something is wrong, show a character being drunk, or a point of view of someone who is in a car crash when the car is flipping around. The less technical camera move, or more of a lens move if you will, is the zoom. Now to zoom, you obviously need a zoom lens. Zooming can be used to put emphasis on a subject, make a subject bigger or smaller, or to make the viewer aware of the camera work. These technical moves are the foundation of all camera movement in film and video. By combining two or more of these moves, you can create any camera move you want. As the name suggests, this is a combination of pan and tilt done simultaneously. It results in a diagonal movement. A combination of a push-in while zooming out or a pull-away while zooming in is called a dolly zoom. It results in a vertigo effect, which was made famous by Alfred Hitchcock. It can be used effectively to communicate fear, panic, or other extreme emotions. Moving around the subject while keeping the subject in the frame is called a parallax. It can be used to create a feeling of being disoriented or being dizzy, depending on the focal length and the speed of the movement. When the camera is moving along with the moving subject, we call it a tracking shot. It can be a push-in, a pull-away, a tracking shot, a boom up, or a boom down. Now we can also follow along a character's action by panning or tilting. However, when panning or tilting, the camera is in a fixed position, so we're not really moving the camera, we're just following the action. This is why pan and tilt cannot be tracking shots on their own. The camera has to be moving to be called a tracking shot. This is a camera move that you can make as complex or as simple as you want. Basically, it's when the whole scene or a big portion of the scene is filmed in one continuous take, which can have a lot of camera moves or none at all. This type of move has been used to capture what seems like an entire film in one continuous take. However, in most cases, they just added multiple takes invisibly, which seems like one continuous take. Just like the oneer, this camera move can be as complex or simple as you want to make it. When the camera operator is holding the camera without any stabilization equipment, it's called handheld. It can result in a very subtle movement, just enough to see that the camera is being held by a person, or it can be very shaky to emphasize chaos and speed, for example. I've probably said it a million times already, but everything in filmmaking should be done for a reason, and not just for the sake of doing it. And this is no different when it comes to moving the camera. First ask yourself, why do I move the camera? And then ask yourself, why do I move it in that specific way? The answer to those questions will give you motivation for moving the camera. And a motivated camera movement is always better than an unmotivated one, because unmotivated camera movement will take attention away from the story because it won't make any sense and it will remind the viewer that they are watching a film. There are different types of motivation for moving the camera. It can be as simple as keeping a moving subject in the frame. If the subject is moving and we are not moving the camera, the subject will leave the frame. So we have a motivation to keep the subject in the frame by moving the camera. Another motivation for moving the camera would be to reveal new information to the viewer. It can be done with a variety of camera moves. Visual storytelling is also a great motivation to move the camera. A most common example would be a push-in to emphasize a character's emotion or a thought process. Besides motivation, it is also a good idea to have moves with a beginning, middle and an end. Let me explain what I mean. A typical camera move starts at a certain frame and ends at a certain frame. The first frame is the beginning, the last frame is the ending. All the frames in between those two is the middle. If you can utilize all three and make them all meaningful, your camera movement will look much better and will keep the audience engaged in the story more. There are also a couple of things you want to avoid when it comes to moving the camera. First one being, don't let the equipment that you have or like to use dictate what type of moves are right for the story. Another thing to avoid is using a camera move just for the purpose of showing off the camera move. This is a big problem today, filmmakers' ego. Doing flashy camera moves might get you a few compliments from fellow filmmakers or people who judge a technical skill, but for the most part, you want the filmmaking to be invisible for the viewer. The viewer should be engaged in the story, and by doing a flashy camera move, you're taking the viewer out of the story and telling him to look at me, at the filmmaker. Now, don't get me wrong, I know that a lot of moves are hard to do and require a lot of skill, and you want some recognition for that skill, but don't let your ego come before the end product. So good camera moves are motivated, have a beginning, middle and an end, and enhance your visual storytelling. Bad camera moves are unmotivated, are dictated by equipment, and put emphasis on the filmmaker instead of the story. Now that we have covered all the different types of camera moves, let's take a look at a couple of examples on how we can apply movement as a visual language tool. The first example is very common but works extremely well. That is the contrast between handheld and steady movement or no movement. Let's say two characters are talking. One of them is angry, the other one is calm. The angry one can be shot using handheld movement, while the other one can be shot using stable movement or no movement at all. The difference will definitely be felt by the audience. The trick is to not overdo the shakiness of the handheld movement. Subtlety is key here. Another way to visually tell a story using a camera move is by breaking the 180-degree rule with a camera move. If you don't know what the 180-degree rule is or how to break it, you can watch my video about it, because you first need to understand the rules before you can break them. Let's once again say two characters are having a conversation. We can use matching over the shoulder shot to capture that conversation. Now let's say that this character changes her standpoint during the conversation. That can be shown by breaking the 180-degree rule by doing a tracking shot from one side of the looking axis to the other side. Now the conversation can continue on that side of the looking axis and the audience will feel that something has changed. This will work especially well if all other shots are static. This is it for today. I hope you guys learned something new or at the very least enjoyed the video. Till next time.